But I really don't have any regrets. I really don't. I've lived exactly how I've wanted to. I've tried my hardest every single time. I didn't win the matches that maybe I should have always won, but I really gave it my all. So that for me is enough.
Hello everybody, welcome back to The Body Serve. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm James.
We are recording at the start of the third set between Novak Djokovic and Stan Wawrinka. And Stan Wawrinka is up 2-0 on the world number one seed defending champion.
Novak Djokovic.
Novak Djokovic, yes. I mean, I just said that Stan and Novak are playing and Stan is up 2-0, so who else could it be?
All right, turn it down right now. I expected Stan to make this a very competitive match, but I can't say that I saw him winning the first two sets. I was a bit surprised by that. And he went down a break immediately in the second set.
He was down 3-0.
Oh, right.
Came back to win at 7-5. Djokovic has just held to start the third. We're recording at the kitchen table and looking at the TV while we record. So hopefully we won't be too distracted.
Novak is clearly not near his best at the moment. He's making a lot of errors. Stan is hitting like crazy. Like, he probably hasn't played like this in literally years. Novak must really hate him. Like, why? How could you not?
Like, expand and expound.
Maybe not hate, but I would be a bit annoyed that they have played many times and Novak has won an overwhelming majority of those matches. But in certain key finals, Stan snatched that Roland Garros title from Novak, which he eventually won the following year. He won a US Open title against Novak. He wrote that open letter at the beginning of this year, very harshly criticizing the way the Gimelstob thing was being handled on the ATP board and player council.
Specifically Gimelstob, or just how the council was being run?
Yeah, wasn't it all of that?
Oh.
Anyway.
Anywho, this first week of the US Open has been wild, which we say about every slam at this point. But I feel like this one has had a decent, well-balanced mix of fuckery and fabulous.
I feel like on the men's side, a lot of these guys are kind of heated. Like, their tone is very pointed right now. Roger Federer got a bit testy in press earlier this week when asked about scheduling and, whether he gets preferential treatment or whatever. And he said, "I am tired of this shit."
I feel like that's number 20 on the notable things that happened.
Just,
why are you leading with this?
Because it was funny how he said shit.
Then say
it was like that one word just jumped out. He said, "No, I don't give my input. Nobody asks me what I want. It's about the tournaments and TV. It's whatever they want." I think let's be real. Obviously, Federer gets treatment that will make them the most money, but also they want to keep him happy because he is such an important person in tennis.
Oh, Novak just retired.
What?
Novak just retired. He got broken by Wawrinka, and he retired.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, he got treatment on the set change, right? I guess the shoulder is much more serious than we thought.
Well,
that's pretty shocking. I can't remember the last time Novak retired in a major.
Wow. So Stan is through to play Medvedev in the quarterfinals. And that's that. As it stands, with the loss, should Nadal win the tournament, he'll be only some 640-something points behind Novak for world number one.
Right. So you've thought about this potentiality.
I did. As soon as he went down 2-0, I thought about it.
Well, a lot of stuff has to happen before that.
Yes. It just struck me as so wild that we could be in this position for number one to be a thing the rest of the year because Novak was so far and away ahead of the field.
Right. Now...
Anyway, I was saying we had an agenda. We're starting with what started the tournament. The big kickoff to the 2019 US Open was the rivalry. The rivalry!
Listen, I have zero interest, negative interest in debating whether this is a rivalry or what. I don't care. I don't care what you call it. A lot of the perennial people on Twitter who show up just when the US Open is on, the influencers, who are trying to get engagement when Serena's playing, but they don't know anything about tennis. I saw the same tweet thousands of times. It's like, do you call this a rivalry? It's like, yes, we have been there. I mean, can we move on?
I was writing that on Tumblr 5 years ago.
Right, like, we get it. How many people need to say it?
So, as it turned out, it was a lovely tonic for Serena Williams. Everything about Maria Sharapova's game fits squarely into her wheelhouse. There is nothing that she does that bothers her, that troubles her. Chrissy Evert now famously says that everything Maria Sharapova does, Serena does better.
Right.
There's nothing that she can do to trouble Serena, provided Serena's healthy and playing well. And the problem for Maria is that her game necessarily makes Serena play better, because she doesn't mix up shots, she doesn't bring her into net, she doesn't vary pace, vary spins. The spin thing being a really important part of it, because when the ball is bouncing at higher levels, at slower pace, but with like higher revolution on the ball, that's a different look and trickier for somebody like Serena. But when you're being fed the same speed, same trajectory all match, it's what she wants.
Yeah. And of course the mental component is a huge part of it. Sharapova's fans are just apoplectic that Serena always gets up for these matches emotionally. And she has since 2005. Like, this, it seems like a mission for her. So that's part of it. But how can you be annoyed by that? I understand that you would like a few easy matches or a few off days, but she just doesn't have off days against Sharapova.
How can who be mad at that?
The
How
fans.
can Sharapova fans be mad at that?
Like
why?
Like you're mad because she's really that good?
Wouldn't you be pressed if your fave, who is a 5-time slam champion, who forget about how you feel about her, will likely be a Hall of Famer, one of the greats of the game, when you factor in her influence around the world, right? Like, she's no punk.
She's a career Grand
Slam. She's accomplished. She is good at tennis. You stand somebody like that, and she started her career really, in effect, with a huge win against Serena in 2004 at Wimbledon. This is gonna press you. It's gonna cause pressitude.
It might, but like at the same time, where is the plan B? Like, you've been trying the same stuff for the past 14 years against Serena, and it hasn't worked. You tried taking 4 to 16 meldoniums before playing her.
Oh my god,
that didn't work. Those are her words, not mine.
Okay, so then ask Maria that. Well, don't ask the fans that. The fans, I'd be mad as hell.
Well, the point is, I wouldn't be a fan. And I'm not a fan.
Okay, this is some wild logic that's not making any sense.
I'm just saying, Sharapova doesn't have a lot of options aside from her normal game. We've known that for many years. Like,
I went back and I watched the highlights, the extended highlights of the 2004 Wimbledon final, and I came to a conclusion that maybe other people have come to in the past. So I don't want to present it as something new here. But one of the narratives that we keep hearing is that, wow, Serena lost those 2 matches against Maria in 2004 and vowed never again to lose to Maria, and that's why. I think Sharapova even wrote about it in her book, saying that somebody overheard Serena saying, I'm never going to lose to that bitch again, or something like that.
Right.
Conjecture.
Which, by the way, journalists are now using as like a primary source, even though it's literally third hand.
At least.
Right.
But my point here in watching that final, I think that the reason why Serena is so staunch in her determination to bring it against Maria every time is not because she doesn't want to ever lose to her again. It's because she felt she never should have lost to her in the first place. If you watch that 2004 final, whenever things are going bad for Serena, like, she looks kind of pressed or whatever in the match, and it's like, oh my god, like, I'm so annoyed. I'm, running out of time. What's going on? She really wasn't that pressed in that second set. She felt like she had time. And in that penultimate game where she got broken for Maria to serve for the match at 6-1, 5-4, Serena was at deuce after saving a bunch of break points, and she hit a big serve out wide to Sharapova's backhand, got the short ball, and then Serena stumbled on her way to the net, almost fell, and then swung the forehand out wide. And that gave Maria that final break point that she capitalized on. And I feel like Serena felt she was going to come back and win that match. And this whole business of I made you with Sloane, I feel like she feels the same way about Maria. That's my conjecture. And in this case, I feel like she made her unnecessarily. That's what Serena feels. And that she's mad as hell about that. About having to go through all this for a decade and a half because she didn't win that match that she should have won.
Okay. I mean,
I
don't know what Serena thinks. I mean, you don't approach matches the way that she does if you don't respect your opponent, though.
What do you mean?
Like, you can say, well, Serena wants so badly never to lose to Maria again, but there is a level of respect between them now. Serena prepares for every single match against them. Like, she knows the game plan. Even if it's not in one of her best seasons, like, she's there, and she's going to fight, and she's going to win. Like, she respects Sharapova as a competitor.
I think she respects the stage of playing Maria more than she does Maria's game necessarily. Because Maria hasn't really given her anything to respect in the last decade and a half.
Right, but
as
she
far
can
as on
see
the court.
Maria against other people.
Sure, but she knows what's going to happen against her in those matches. And so, yeah, Serena sure as hell is bringing her game for that stage, I think. All conjecture. Let's move on. In that match, one Alexis Ohanian-Williams was wearing a t-shirt under his jacket that had 2 letters visible, but folks did some sleuthing.
Well, all American kids between a certain age would know that that's the D.A.R.E shirt. I knew that because when we were kids, that program, it's a drug prevention program in like elementary and high schools.
And the font is very, very specific.
Yeah. So, of course, as soon as that was... I mean, I didn't spot it until somebody pointed it out on Twitter, like showed a picture of it. And of course, people ran with that saying that was a petty dig at Sharapova's drug suspension. Do I know if that's the case? I have no idea. It could be. Alexis was liking a few tweets that were sort of making fun of that whole situation. So I think it was sort of a winking, yeah, I know what I was doing kind of thing.
He sure as hell knew what he was doing. You can't be coincidental in that situation.
Now, was it petty? Most definitely.
Absolutely.
What I think maybe... okay, let me just be real here. We need to stop coddling this 30-year-old white woman. Like, it's not bullying. It's just not. The truth is, she served a suspension for a banned substance. Period. And we, on this podcast, have tried to be very fair and accurate in the way that we talk about the suspension, what meldonium is and what it's supposed to do, and whether or not it even has performance-enhancing qualities. Oh, I think we've been fairly measured on it, or have tried to, but she doesn't need to be treated with kid gloves. You know, this isn't bullying. It was petty, but like, that's it. This is sports. Get over it.
Yeah, it was a t-shirt.
And she's a grown-up. Like, they're all grown-ups here. And the other thing is that then people are saying, I can't believe Serena is so trashy to sort of condone this kind of behavior. Or at worst, encourage it. Like, listen, your partner can do whatever they want to sort of take up for you. Like, if some...
You've told me many times, if somebody was out of pocket with me, like, you'd be putting on your hunting shoes.
I'd be ready to fight. But, like, people stick up for their partners even when they know they're wrong. You know, that's just like the nature of relationships. So I think, you know, we can giggle and kind of move on from that. It's not that serious.
Okay. Serena, at one point in press early in the tournament, she was asked a specific question. Now, we've talked about leading into this tournament that there was always going to be some bullshit about the US Open final last year. For better or worse, we'd already seen this in action ahead of the tournament with Chris Clary writing that piece about Carlos Ramos not officiating any of Serena's matches at this US Open, as if it were news, really.
As if that would ever happen.
Right? This is not a case of Serena requesting that Ramos not ref her matches, not like when Rafa did with Bernardes a couple years ago. She's just out here minding her own business. She's just out here minding her own business, trying to prepare for this tournament. People are drumming up this issue.
Yeah.
And so she gets asked about it in press, saying, well, you know, Ramos will not be officiating any of your matches at this tournament. Do you have any thoughts on that? And she says, I don't know who that is. Now, this response sent people into a tizzy. I mean, in particular, the male British journos, if we're being real here, thought that it was...
I mean, we can name them if you want.
They saw this as their opportunity to be snide and cute and be, writing all kinds of funny tweets on the internets. Or so they thought.
It's disingenuous, is what it is. Nobody cares. They don't care. They're just trying to rile it. They're just trying to get engagement. They're trying to get clicks on their tweets. That's it.
Literally.
It's
you could
notoriety,
play Federer right here. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
No.
Nobody cares.
But the thing is, they don't even care.
Yes. Each use of nobody cares represents one person or one group of people.
I don't think that they are deeply offended by it. I think that they know that there is value in criticizing Serena because people get riled up. And their tweets will hop to the top of people's timelines.
They're hanging on to this morality aspect of it. That she's being so rude and disrespectful after she was so rude and disrespectful last year. Quite frankly, nobody's talking about the 2018 final anymore. I've heard such little talk about it. Quite frankly, much less than I expected.
Definitely. And I will talk about this throughout the episode, but the news has been so full of new players and stories of Americans breaking out and all this. There's been so much other stuff to talk about that has really been under the radar. And
that's where this has backfired for these people because they thought they were going to be breaking some news here.
No.
But people are otherwise occupied.
Right.
And satisfiedly so.
And also, can we just talk about the genius of I don't know who that is? Because clearly it is a nod to Mariah's I don't know her meme.
Yeah, Mariah originated this meme back in 2003 when asked in a sequence overseas. She was asked about Beyonce and what she thought about Beyonce, and she was like, cool girl, she's really talented, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And in the next breath, the presenter was like, and J-Lo? And before the O came out of the presenter's mouth, Mariah's head was shaking left to right, east to west, her curls bouncing, and she said, I don't know her.
With a smile, with a big smile. Now, Serena did not say
that did
this.
not crack.
Yep.
It was like, I don't know her. Smile, keep going, yes, and next. Ask about her again if you dare. Which is the whole purpose of this, right?
Right.
The I don't know her is designed to shut shit down right away. Like, I'm not here for this mess. It's also shady.
Yes, because you are communicating a lot with the I don't know this person. You're making a statement in that way, but it is also, in my mind, Serena was criticizing the question itself. Was saying, I reject the question. Why are we talking about it?
And I do not wish to talk about it further.
Right. So, obviously, nobody dared to ask further.
Because what's the follow-up question, right? If she says Carlos Ramos, if they say Carlos Ramos is not umpiring your things anymore this tournament, and she goes, I don't know who that is, then you then have to say, well, Carlos Ramos is the umpire of your thing last year. Right. And then she's like, okay.
Which obviously she knows, so no one's going to do that. The annoying thing about all of that was just Chris Clary was sort of banging this beat in the week leading up to the US Open, and not a lot of people were even engaging. The thing is, of course, Ramos would never be assigned to a Williams match, probably ever again. What organization would ever create that situation again? Never. It doesn't take a request from the players to stop that from happening. If you're an organizer, you're like, oh God, no, that's a powder keg. What?
It makes zero sense for your business.
Right. And also umpires and players are supposed to have this, it's supposed to be neutral. There's supposed to be impartiality, and that would be literally impossible in that situation. And that's not a dig at either of the people involved, but it's just impossible. There's too much history.
It's the way it is.
Right.
And so for this question to be brought in a press conference, it's shit stirring at its finest, right. Really. Like, you're entitled to ask that question, but are you really shocked that Serena is not willing to receive it well?
But what's the answer that you want? You want a quip. You probably got it. I don't know who that is. It's probably an answer that you'd accept because it's a quip. It's a good soundbite.
What would have been sufficient for her in that moment? For her to say, well, after everything that happened last year, I think he really did me wrong. So
Right.
I think it's for the best. Next question, please. But it's about this rudeness, right? It's about this policing of Serena's behavior
Yeah.
and black women's
Yeah.
behavior. We see time and time again the way that white people are allowed to express themselves in certain ways that black people just can't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that on that.
So what is this business of the person who you said we weren't allowed to mention on the podcast if he or she lost to a certain alt-right starlet?
Listen, this will be the last time in the next 6 months that Joe Wilfred Tsonga's name will be mentioned on this
You
podcast.
said 5 episodes.
I said 5 episodes, but Joe Wilfred Tsonga held a 2-set-to-love lead and allowed that to happen. Allowed that to fester at the U.S. Open.
You don't have to tell me. But I am just going to say that what you're doing is called ex post facto. You can't change the law retroactively.
And I'd like you to know that I'm happy for your knowledge. It's one of the reasons I'm with you. I like that you read and know things, but I don't give a fuck. Wow. I am still inaugurating the Hall of Shame. As
I told you that I would walk off this podcast.
Walk.
You're going to finish
walk
it by
if
yourself?
you dare. Merrick had to do it. Fill airtime. The Hall of Shame is being erected this episode, and Joe Wilfred Tsonga is your first, inauguree? Inductee? Yes, he's going in.
Wow.
And I have a few words for him.
So Tennis Sandgren is not in the Hall of Shame, but Joe Tsonga is. Can you make that make sense?
And what he did was egregious. I don't know what else to say to you. So, I'd like to think that this was a one-off thing, but Joe has shown that he cannot be trusted to win matches that he should be winning. And I just want to let him know that in your case, Joe, and I'm sure you'd agree, there is no historical evidence to give comfort to the theory that you can reform your behavior. However, if there is a chance for you to clean up your act and demonstrate respect for the important tasks that you're given within Grand Slam tennis, such as beating and cleaning up the alt-right in the first round, then I'm willing to give that positive outcome a last chance. If.
Are you using Bill Babcock's words against him? You know they weren't meant for him.
If Joe Tsonga is able to pull something out of his hat and do something spectacular within the next 6 months, I will take him out of the Hall of Shame. But until then...
I feel so attacked right now on my own show.
Seriously, what the fuck?
That seems like ages ago. Sandgren did win another match.
And then yesterday, both he and Isner were booted from the tournament.
Yes, Isner by Cilic. Cilic, who actually played pretty badly, but still beat John Isner. And Sandgren by Schwartzman, who didn't have very much trouble with him at all.
Cilic had one game where he had 15 double faults in one service game.
15, really.
Isner
I think you're confusing him with Yelena Ostapenko.
Isner had 17 break points in that one game and couldn't get it done. It was the most spectacular display of futility from somebody who I wanted to be futile. It doesn't happen very often.
I feel like that is fake news, but... Okay, let's talk about some of the awesome stuff that has happened in the first week of the final slam of the year. 2 great stories. Several American players who have really broken out at this tournament. One of whom is Taylor Townsend, who somehow is only 23 years old. There's so much ahead of her still, but it feels like she's been out here forever because she was the top-ranked junior, and she just had trouble crossing over onto the main tour and having these results consistently. She plays a lot of challengers.
Yeah, she's unwilling to travel overseas for the most part to go through qualifying because she doesn't see it as financially wise. Which she was asked about it in press, and she said, listen, this is what works for me. I'm not going to spend $3,000 on a plane ticket and be in Europe for 3-4 weeks doing challengers not knowing if I'm going to make any money or be able to recoup any of those losses, because she doesn't have the big time sponsors that other players do.
Right.
So hopefully that will change.
And we know she doesn't have that USTA money behind her anymore.
So sponsors, give her your coin so that we can see her play some more red clay events.
Yeah. And I think with someone like Taylor, the inequities as far as wildcards go are very clear. I'm sure she has probably benefited a lot from being American, but compared to people like Jack Sock or Ryan Harrison, Ryan Harrison got wildcards for years. I'm just an incredible number of wildcards.
The IMG connection
seasons.
with the Harrisons, not just him, but his brother. Christian Harrison has played way more tennis tournaments than he has any business playing in his career. And now Ryan Harrison is out here getting wildcards into the commentary booth. I'm sitting down listening to this match the other night, and I'm trying to figure out who is this person that sounds like Thomas Hayden Church. And you said to me, "Oh, that's Ryan Harrison." I'm like, shut the fuck up.
His voice is really terrible. But Taylor's one of the only serve and volleyers out there. She presents a very different look to players, obviously. In the second round, she took on Simona Halep, the Wimbledon champion, and Simona was just not really feeling it. I think she was befuddled for long stretches by the constant net rushing. It's just like, it's too much. It's so relentless, and it has to be so demoralizing that every time you look up, there she is. And you may pass her a lot. Like, you may pass her a ton of times, and she just keeps coming. Simona was criticized for not using the lob really at all, which I was surprised about. I didn't really understand the tactics there at all. But she was trying to pass her consistently, but not lob her.
Either way, I'm here for it. So many times at these tournaments where we get a North American-centric feed, where the coverage is geared toward American fans and covering the American players, we're left with undesirables breaking through at these tournaments. This tournament, we actually have two feel-good stories that we can get behind.
Right.
There's Taylor Townsend, and then there's Kristie Ahn.
And Kristie Ahn, this is her first main draw Grand Slam victory. She's now in the fourth round. She's going to face Elise Mertens.
She's 27 years old. We thought it was going to be a fairly easy first round for Svetlana Kuznetsova, coming off of her finals appearance in Cincinnati. But then Kristie takes her out in straight sets, I believe 7-5, 6-2.
So then Kristie beat Kalinskaya and Yelena Ostapenko in the third round.
Kalinskaya, the woman who beat Sloane Stephens in straight sets, looked wonderful in that match.
Yeah, absolutely. And then against Ostapenko, toward the end of the second set, Kristie looked to have hyperextended her knee and got it all wrapped up and looked to be in pain and somehow made it through that match. She was aided by Ostapenko's just horrendous serving. I mean, these double faults are flying off the racket.
In her second round match, she opened the match with a service game featuring 7 double faults. And she won that game.
She won the game.
She won that game. She won that match in straight sets with one ace and 17 double faults.
Yeah. I really expected Alison Risk to win that match, especially after beating Muguruza, but it was not to be. Kristie Ahn actually made her Grand Slam debut in 2008, 11 years ago. She lost in the first round to Safina in straight sets.
And part of her story that's fun, but also I'm sure not so fun for her, is the fact that her parents, her father in particular, is just kind of waiting and hoping for her to be done with tennis so that she can go get a corporate job.
Right. Just, be financially secure and stable, and rather than chase this kind of pipe dream.
Well, guess what? She's making over $200,000 this week. And she'll be able to sustain and support herself for a little while longer.
Right. So Townsend is going to face Bianca Andreescu tomorrow, or probably today when you're listening to this. It may already be over. Ahn faces Mertens, both in the round of 16. Townsend and Andreescu is a really, really difficult matchup for Taylor, but I think she has a chance. It's possible. The serve and volley can really mess a lot of people up, but Bianca is looking really fearsome at this event.
I saw a stat that she hasn't lost a completed match since February or something like that.
Yeah.
Granted,
she
she's
was-
been out injured
yeah.
for a long time, but it seems that whenever she shows up, she wins at this point.
Yeah.
Perhaps the biggest news this first week was yet another run by Coco Gauff in a second consecutive slam following her run at Wimbledon. When was that now? Like 2 months ago? A month and a half ago? There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, there's no denying, like, this girl generates incredible interest and hype. She's such a star already. And there's so much to love about her game. And at the same time, you can see that she's still growing into her body. There's things about her game that need work. And she's 15 years old. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. But
So, she starts by playing Potapova in the first round, struggles in the first set, eventually finds her way through that, wins a tough 3-set match against Timea Babos in the second round, and then the big blockbuster, third round, takes on world number 1 and number 1 seed Naomi Osaka and loses 6-3, 6-love.
I don't want to say I told you so, not you specifically, but I mentioned that there's no way Naomi's losing that, and people were like, oh, don't be so sure, Coco's going to win that. Like, no, there was no way it was even going to be close, in my opinion. There's just, Naomi's game just has too much, and she's a number 1 player for a reason.
The defending champion for a reason.
Right. This match, I mean, is really like the most hyped match of the tournament so far. It's the highest rated match of the tournament so far.
The only thing that will top that is if we get closer to a final where now with Novak out, we get a Fedal for the first time at the US Open.
Which is not going to happen, but it's theoretically possible.
My point in saying that was how hyped it was.
Yeah.
That was the magnitude of what happened.
And of course, we know that the match itself did not really live up to the hype. There were a lot of entertaining points, and dare I say that the 6-love set was closer than it sounds?
Sure, you can say that.
I think so. Because, you know, the games themselves weren't blowouts. And I did feel that there were times when Coco could have sort of wrested the momentum a little bit, but Naomi was really just very solid in almost every aspect.
She played a smart match. She knew where to attack Coco. The forehand is obviously her weaker spot. She served to the forehand a lot, especially on the deuce court. And I just want to take a moment to laud Coco and the aspects of her game that I find exemplary, even at 15 years old. She has a world-class backhand already.
Yeah.
Her serve, she goes for too much on the second serve. She needs to work that out when she's progressing through the ranks.
Yeah.
Because if she's serving well on her first serve and she's getting a lot of those in, it's potent. We saw her hit 119 miles an hour on the first serve, which at 15 years old is crazy.
Apparently she can hit up into the high 120s. She's done it in juniors already.
Apparently.
Yeah.
So she's got the serious pop on the first serve, but she needs more variation on the second serve and to work on the forehand. That said, she can rally from the baseline with anybody. We saw that at Wimbledon, and it just so happened that in this match, she came up against somebody who was playing a tight game from the baseline as well, and had more firepower to send back her way.
Right. I was impressed with Naomi in this match because it came off as just very professional, very extremely prepared. She, like you said, she knew the parts of Coco's game that were vulnerable, but also I feel like Naomi has methodically added things to her game. These short-angled backhands cross-court that she was doing, which look very much like Serena Williams' backhands, obviously, but I don't remember seeing that very much in Naomi's game before. I think, you know, she worked on her movement so much over last year, and until it was no longer a liability, these short-angled cross-court backhands now, being able to make the court seem a lot longer than it is when someone is rallying from the baseline and you could just end the point by hitting this crisp angle. It's like she's a beta version of herself. Like, she's working in all of these improvements to her game that it's kind of scary.
Well, she's super young. she clearly has not reached the peak of her powers. What's more instructive for me about Naomi as far as her ceiling is looking at what she still doesn't do very well. And she is still a fish out of water at net.
Sure.
Like, it can be pretty bad for her at net. If she were to ever get that up to like 75%, watch out. Now, something we want to wade into here is a little bit of a pushback against the building fervor for Gauff. The swell of anticipation and hype and elevating her in the public's eye that we've seen, because she's still 15 years old. And one of the ways that that's manifested itself in this first week is the ESPN crew right off the bat having this debate about the age eligibility rule. How and why were we even there?
And so some people were saying, oh yes, I think we should waive it in her case because it's such a unique situation. The fact that there was even a debate on television made me very uncomfortable, because the WTA has enacted this rule. It's been on the books for over 20 years, and it was developed through consultation with psychologists, with sports medicine physicians, with people who are experts in human anatomy and child development.
They didn't come up with the desire to implement this rule out of nowhere. It was born out of cautionary tales. And this is something we talked about after Wimbledon, when Coco had her first run, that there have been a litany of child prodigies who've burnt out in tennis, and or who've had people exploit them and take advantage of them. And one of the most idiotic things that we've seen this first week was folks saying, Anika Noni Rose, Laurel being one of them, saying, well, double standard, Tracy Austin won the US Open at 16. Like, Coco can clearly win this tournament. So, like, what are y'all talking about?
So there's so much wrong there. First of all, nobody's saying that Coco can't or shouldn't win this tournament. She's here to play. It's
one of the tournaments that she's allowed to play as a 15-year-old. She's here.
Yes.
If she wins it, good for her.
The other thing is Tracy Austin won the US Open in 1979. Her career basically ended by her 21st birthday because of back injuries. I don't know the cause and effect there, but a lot of these young prodigies had short careers because of debilitating injuries, burnout. I mean, Martina Hingis had those foot problems in the early 2000s when she was still
a young 20-something.
Top 2 player, top 3. Like, she was very young, even though she had been on tour for a long time.
There's the physical demands of being a top tennis player. Compare that to 1979 to now. The game is infinitely more physical. There's that. There's a reason why we haven't seen child prodigies, teenagers, win slams on the WTA Tour in the last 20 years. It's not for nothing. The reason for that is the game has changed. It's that much more physical. So there's that. There's historically, there have been family members who have pushed these young players too much, who've taken advantage of them, who've abused them. People push back and say, well, Coco's parents are cool. They're good. They have our best interest at heart.
Nobody is saying that they're not,
Not only is nobody saying that they're not, but also we don't know her parents. Like, how are you in a position to vouch for them?
Exactly. So
I could sit here and say that, yeah, they seem like they're doing an outstanding job, but I don't know them.
This is why, these rules are not enacted on a case-by-case basis. And Coco would be a prime example of where this rule needs to exist, because there is so much incentive for people around her to take advantage. Again, not casting aspersions on her family or her team. We don't know them. It's not about that. It's about any young player who has the potential to make incredible amounts of money. There is incentive to have this person work a lot.
You factor in that in this day and age of heightened media scrutiny, of social media, where the spotlight will be that much more intense than when, say, Tracy Austin had to go through it. It's, in sum, a lot and way too much. Like, it's all well and good for Coco to be out here jumping up on her bed after winning a couple matches at Wimbledon, just fangirling over the people who are interacting with her and the people who she's getting to meet. That's wonderful. But she suffers a couple losses, and those haters, those betters, those trolls, they will be there. What is the psychological effect of that on a 15-year-old? There is so much at play here that's untold and unknown that it's absolutely irresponsible to be trying to make this young girl an exception to this much needed rule.
Right. And who are the people pushing for the rule to be relaxed?
Exactly. Is it the presenters on ESPN who...
Some of whom, because of all of these myriad conflicts, have a financial stake in player successes.
Who work for a company who's now telling us that their first week ratings are up 33% over last year. And what's the reason for that? I don't know.
Well, she is a big part of it.
Maybe 3 night sessions with Coco Gauff. Maybe that has something to do with it.
And so again, like, and nobody is saying that 15-year-olds can't play. It's limiting the amount of time that they have to be at work, basically. Because in other industries, children who work are under very severe restrictions. Like, look at TV and film in the US, you know.
She's still able to play tournaments. She can play 9 as a minimum 9 up to 12 as a 15-year-old. And then
14, I think.
Yeah, but they're like...
Oh, because she achieved certain things.
There are certain like kickers that would have to happen for that. It's not that she can just enter any blank 14.
Like unlock the next level.
They're levels. Then she'll be able to play more when she's 16. I feel like it's totally reasonable.
Yeah,
reasonable.
I don't like the kind of like strike while the iron is hot, because she's talented, but she's young, and the talent is not going to disappear. The risk is really overworking someone's body when they're too young. Not that the opportunities are going to disappear if you don't take them now. They're still going to be there in a year.
Coco Gauff is a budding cash cow for a lot of people, a lot of companies, a lot of businesses, a lot of academies. There's so much money to be made off of her that for that to happen doesn't necessarily gel with her best interest. And so when this push is being made to have her play more tournaments against the advice of this rule, it doesn't sit well with me. So then she lost the match, and then the net exchange happened with Naomi. Walk me through that quickly.
So Naomi and Coco hugged at the net, and it looked like they were having a little conversation. And then as they went to their opposite sides, Naomi came over to Coco's chair and continued the conversation. And I was like, I think Naomi is going to ask her to stay on court. And we couldn't really make out what was being said on TV, but that's exactly what she said. She wanted Coco to stay on court. Very interesting moment. I don't think we've ever seen anything like that in tennis, aside from the finals. And so Mary Jo Fernandez handled it quite well, because it was a pretty unusual thing. Coco said a few words. She said she said no to Naomi originally because she was afraid of crying through it. And she handled herself well. I mean, I don't know how a 15-year-old is supposed to handle that moment. It almost seems weird to evaluate it. You know, but Naomi is just a unique person. And a lot of people will say that was very calculated, and she was trying to get the crowd on her side and make herself look better. And the little that I know about Naomi, that doesn't ring true to me. It felt more organic than that.
Yeah, those people and those thoughts can get in the bin, as far as I'm concerned. There's an argument to be made that once Coco said that she didn't want to do that, then it should have been over. I absolutely get that.
Yeah, I get that.
Because I'm coming from a place where I do believe that Naomi was being genuine, that I won't hold her responsible for that. Because I feel like she felt she was doing a genuine thing and something that was good.
Right.
But it created a kind of a weird situation.
It was a little weird, but it was also very emotional. I felt really almost protective of Coco. And I have felt that a few times this week, which makes me feel uncomfortable. Because it's somebody I don't know. But I just want her to be okay, you know? And Naomi got emotional as well. But there was something very moving about seeing a young black woman point to another young black woman and lift her up beside her. And I really felt that what Naomi was doing was meant to be supportive. It was meant to be celebratory of what Coco has accomplished. Yeah. And it was also, looking at this other family, this other black family. They grew up alongside each other in Florida, and say, like, we came from kind of the same place and we're both doing great things. And that's really cool. So I thought that aspect of it was very powerful.
Also, Naomi, while she didn't go through what Coco is going through now, she had a lot of eyes on her as a young person and has gone through a lot as a young slam champion in the last year and a half. Mm-hmm. She has seen the pitfalls. She knows what can go right and wrong, and some of the things that Coco will now have to deal with. And so that protective element it's strange to see that from somebody who is so young but is able to act in a mothering kind of way because of it.
Right.
There is a specter of race with this whole thing too, because you have those two families referenced in that situation where Naomi's talking about her family and growing up with the Gauff family. But what's unspoken is that they're both black families. And the template for this is the Williams family. Mm-hmm. And they were the ones who blazed a path for their families to exist and have this moment, right? They're the ones who are now the template for how to do things, how not to do things. Mm-hmm. You can look at Richard and say, well, I'm not going to go that route in promoting my child. I'm going to be a little bit more temperate maybe, but I am going to take from him and be that protective of my child, because they, at the end of the day, are a young woman of color growing up in this still lily white world. Less so now in the last 10 years, but there are things that they're going to have to go through that other young women in tennis won't have to do. And so there's this lineage, there's this black lineage in tennis now that it's kind of a beautiful thing to see.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it started with Althea and it's flowed through Zena Garrison and Lori McNeil, Leslie Allen.
Chanda Rubin.
All of these women who, in their own ways, like blaze the trails, and then through the Williams, obviously, because they don't want to give Serena and Venus the only credit.
No.
But now you look at U.S. women's tennis, and who do you see? Like, who are the big stars? Sloane, Madison. Naomi is not U.S. tennis, but she grew up in the U.S. It's crazy. Like, the demographic shift is amazing to watch in real time.
Howard Bryant had this thread on the whole incident, and it was instructive, and I encourage people to read it. And one of the things that he touched on was people parsing and analyzing the Gauff family's behavior and response when Pam Shriver brings them up on screen afterward. And it becomes a strange situation because that's clearly not something they wanted for themselves in that moment.
Right, or were prepared to deal with.
But then they're now subject to criticisms and critiques of how they handled that situation. Mm-hmm. And again, we've lived through how people critiqued the way Richard Williams in particular handled his daughter's initiations into tennis. We should be very hesitant to criticize them and say flippant, casual things like, well, I don't like the way he said that, or whatever.
Or they should have been more grateful or whatever. Like, maybe they didn't want that for her.
Yeah.
And maybe they were just concerned with going to find their daughter and comforting her.
Making sure she was okay. And maybe they don't want the spotlight the way Richard may have wanted the spotlight.
Or Patrick Mouratoglou wants Pam to come over.
So there's that. Whenever there's a black athlete in sport, and whenever there's a black tennis player, race necessarily has to be part of the discussion.
Okay, so moving on to some less stellar news. Carla Suarez Navarro, surprisingly, was popped for the first round performance rule. The previous victims were Anna Tadishvili, Bernard Tomic at Roland Garros and Wimbledon, now US Open. Carla Suarez was fined, $40,000, which is the first round prize money, because they said she was injured, she shouldn't have played, she shouldn't have entered, basically. And this has shocked people, because Carla is known universally as a professional, as a competitor, as kind of a really like stand-up gal. And she has gotten a lot of support from kind of the tennis community, who are shocked. She has already officially appealed it, so we will wait to see if she gets the Tadishvili treatment or the Tomic treatment. But she says, I've been dealing with these back problems. We prepared so cautiously. She came to New York 10 days early to prepare her back, doing all these preventative exercises, and she just couldn't compete when it came down to it in the match.
Nick Kyrgios had an eventful first week at the US Open. He's no longer in the tournament because Andrei Rublev took him out.
Mm-hmm.
He got himself into a lot of trouble when, after one of his wins, he casually said that the ATP Tour was corrupt.
And, oh my lord, people were upset. Those people in power were saying, well, if they weren't going to suspend him before, they certainly are now. And like, oh god, that sounds really bad, doesn't it? Like, if his behavior in Cincinnati didn't rise to that level, you're going to suspend him because he said something bad about the tour? That's, if you're trying to prove that you are not corrupt, that's not the best way to do it. He did retract, because I'm sure the ATP probably called him and was like, listen, you need to deal with this now. So he issued this apology on the iPhone Notes app. He apologized. He said it's not exactly what he meant, and that he knows he has a lot of problems, but basically a lot of other people have problems too. It was like the weakest apology.
And that corrupt was not the word he meant to use.
Yes. What he meant is that other people get away with worse, so what about them? And this is the thing you see him harping on over and over. It's just so tiresome at this point. Because he's talking about Rafa's time violations. This time, like, he is so fixated on the time violations. So there's that. Rublev took him out 7-6, 7-6, and then, 6-3 or something in the third set? I told you that men's third quarter was going to be wild. And the Kyrgios-Tsitsipas match never happened because Rublev took out Tsitsipas in the first round, has now beaten Kyrgios, and will face Berrettini in the fourth round. That is an amazing opportunity to get to the semis between Rublev, Berrettini, Monfils, and Pablo Andujar, who is also a total shock.
Well, Berrettini gets an opportunity to atone for his atrocious match against Federer at Wimbledon. Like, it's one of the worst matches you'll ever see in your lifetime.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll ever get over it or forget it.
That is so rude.
It's so true. Like, he should have been fined 50% of his match fee.
Wow. Monfils Shapovalov, I should point out, it was one of the most exciting matches of the first week of the tournament. For long stretches, Shapovalov was totally in the zone and seemed like nobody could beat him at that moment.
It was a reminder of why everybody was so high in his talent for so long.
Yeah.
Because he'd been MIA for much of this year, and he seemed to have been finding his form again in the last few weeks, and he showed out.
And this is after totally destroying Felix Auger-Aliassime in the first round.
That was not even close.
Wow. Oh, yeah, that was bad. But Monfils and the other member of Gem's life, Alina Svitolina, are both looking really good. Svitolina beat Madison today pretty easily, actually. Madison made just a whole hell of a lot of errors. The return was bad. Svitolina's serving was very, very good. She lost only 12 points on serve, I think. But a lot of that had to do with Madison's return was just way off. I think maybe she was ill in her match against Kenin and still won, but she was feeling very nauseous. I wonder if there were some lingering effects because she didn't look like she has been.
This is the point of the episode, and it seems that we have at least one every episode now, where I tell you that you're being a bit tangential.
Oh, because I'm actually talking about tennis?
No, because we were talking about the men's third quarter, which a natural segue was, if we are to then deal with what's happening now, would be to deal with the men in total and then do with the women. So
I think our listeners can keep up. I think you don't underestimate them.
Be that as it may, we're going to go back to the men. And so as it stands, fourth round matches tomorrow, Monday, when you'll likely be listening to this show, Rublev will be playing Berrettini, like you said. Monfils against Andujar. Incredible opportunity for Monfils to make a semi-final there. And then Zverev, who somehow is still in this tournament.
Zverev has sort of been hobbling through these matches.
It's wild.
Playing 2 unnecessary 5-set matches, beat Bedene in 4. Things did not look good for quite a lot of that match.
He plays Schwartzman in the 4th round. And the winner of that match will play the winner of Marin Cilic and Nadal. Nadal taking out Young Chung in straight sets. Good to see him back on tour, playing well. And Cilic, who we talked earlier in the show, he took out Isner.
Yeah, Cilic has been looking less than impressive, but hey, he's in a 4th round again.
Let me tell you, all those double faults against Nadal is not going to cut it.
No. As we were on like a little intermission break earlier, and I was reading that apparently Djokovic got booed as he left the court today. We were watching it on mute while we were recording, so we didn't see that or hear that. So it's not great.
It's less than stellar. Some would call it trash behavior.
It is trashy behavior, New York. I mean, what do you think this is? Paris? Like, everybody calm down.
I mean,
that is just wild that you would boo a player who retired with an injury.
Well, at least we are able to definitively identify them as boos and not ooze.
Oh my girl, do not even get me started, because I'm in the mood to name names today. Certain journalists were trying to rile up the fiction that New York has a problem with Naomi Osaka by saying that when Coco was told your next opponent is Naomi Osaka, the crowd like gasped, like ooh, and she's like, the New York crowd just booed Naomi Osaka.
So we know it's a female journalist now.
He or she. But several journalists were circulating that fiction and building on top of it. And you know what? That needed to be shut down right away. And luckily myself and a lot of other people were like, don't start this. Let's not go down that road.
So you want to pat on the back?
That's not what happened. No, I'm just saying. That was really annoying. Because that's the kind of stuff that riles people up and makes them turn on innocence.
Oh.
Anyway, you said we were talking about the men's.
Yes.
So, Wawrinka will play Medvedev. Sorry. And Federer will play Grigor Dimitrov. That's a feel-good story, isn't it?
Yes.
Grigor wearing the hell out of the Nike purple and black kit.
Yeah.
With his headband.
He looks good.
Looks great. He's playing good tennis for maybe the first time this year.
Look, the headband is genius. It's strategic. It covers certain diminishing aspects of his hairline. And he wears it well. And it complements his kit.
Yeah.
Like, he is still a very good-looking dude.
Yes. Ridiculous. Just gifted. He benefited from Borna Coric giving him a walkover. But he beat Seppi in the first round, and then today he beat Alex de Minaur, which is a huge win.
In straight sets.
Yeah. Is huge for Grigor this year because it has not been happening for him. But he seems happy off court. He's been hanging with Team Williams a lot.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Serena is now making fun of him on social media, which like you're part of the team when that starts to happen.
They've hit together a lot in recent times.
Yeah.
And then they were in the relaxing room, the relaxation room, the quiet room, or whatever it's called.
And Grigor had Chip on his lap.
Yeah.
Also, he didn't know that he was being filmed, which is such a Serena thing to do.
But, I mean, listen. Serena keeps her exes close. We know this.
Oh, my God. I was just talking to someone saying Alexis must be a very secure guy.
That was me.
Oh, I was telling someone else then, too. I know other people people other than you. But, there's two confirmed exes who are in the very close circle now. One of whom is her coach.
Yeah, Maratiglu, who then went and found another black woman to marry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, you're... Okay. We're going there.
Do with that as you will.
Okay. Daniil Medvedev is having quite a week.
Yes, Medvedev is behaving like trash.
Well, he's behaving like a cartoon villain or like a comic book villain.
But this is the thing. It got me thinking. Being a villain in tennis is good. I get the desire to have a villain and somebody who can drum up interest and get people to watch the sport. And I think I touched on this on the preview episode, that Medvedev was kind of filling that role.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't want me to go into the whole, the Russian part of it, being on U.S. soil and whatever.
Sure.
But like, look, he's on court now it's like he's a fictional character in Glow.
No, exactly. He's like
the Soviet like character in Glow. That's who he is.
Mm.
So I was ahead of the time with my statements. Thank you.
Yeah.
But what I want to know is, why can't we have somebody fill this role and do it well without also being a problematic asshole?
Well,
is it because he's a man and those two are just enmeshed?
Well, I mean, don't you kind of have to be an asshole to be a villain, or else it will ring false?
Listen, there was a qualifier. I said problematic asshole.
Oh, well, he is that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these things are like building on each other now. In 2016, he was disqualified from the Challenger in Savannah by making a comment under his breath about the black female umpire and Donald Young. He said, "I know that you are friends. I'm sure about it." He was disqualified immediately. The ump said, "Default Medvedev, unsportsmanlike conduct." And the tournament referee came out and backed her up. So he was kicked out of the Challenger. That was the first weird thing with him. In 2017 at Wimbledon, he was pissed off about a call by Mariana Alves, the chair umpire, and after the match he went over to his wallet, grabbed some coins, and threw them at the chair. I suppose to imply corruption or something unseemly. And he was fined $14,500 for the entire match. I think the actual coin throwing was worth $7,500.
He's out here having disgusting interactions with ball kids.
Oh God. Okay. So in the third round match against Lopez, this is where the villain really started to come out. He's racked up a lot of fines this week, actually. But he snatched the towel away from one of the ball kids or people, or some of these ball kids look like they're 30-something. But it doesn't matter how old this person was. He snatched the towel and made some comment, and the ball kid looked at him like, what? And he was given a code violation for that. But in my opinion, like, this shit needs to be game penalty, default, done. This is one of the worst things you can do on a tennis court, I think, is abuse or harass or disrespect the volunteers or the people who work on court. The ball kids especially. Like, I don't care how old they are. They are human beings who have volunteered their time to work on a tennis court, and they are vulnerable. You are the star. You're the person with the power in the situation. They're at your whim.
It's also not difficult to do. I don't care what anybody wants to tell you.
You don't even have to say thank you for what they do. You just have to be vaguely decent as a human being.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
It's so simple.
Also, they shouldn't be carrying around your nasty old towel. And this is the fault of tennis in general. The leadership thinks that's just one more thing that's going to slow down the sport, because that is the worst thing that can happen to tennis, is one more second between a point. So anyway, there were a few, admonishments from the umpire during the match. He acted a damn fool throughout it. And then he was showered with booze, lifted up his arms, and basically said, "When you go to sleep at night, know that your boos have powered me to this win." This is why I'm saying it's cartoonish, because it's so ridiculous. Like, he's leaning so hard into the villain thing. I'm just failing to find the charisma in it, because I know that only a certain type of person is allowed to be this villain. First of all, no woman, period, of any race, nationality, language, or anything would be allowed to be that person. Putintseva, people find amusing, but she's not a star. She's not top 10. She's not going to be on that stage. It's not going to be taken that way. Serena fans have kind of become like the police, like the FBI over the past year, because we're always looking for violations from other players. Like, we're the snitches now, right? But I want to know what would happen if a black female player behaved that way.
Doesn't even have to be a black female player. I think you can take race out of it altogether in this situation. It really is the ways in which men are allowed to occupy space and act a fool and do whatever they want, and people find it amusing.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's something to celebrate. I don't know. Maybe I always thought it's because I'm not really a sports fan. I like tennis and that's pretty much it. So I don't like that stuff. I don't like the trash talking in sports, all those sort of accoutrements of sports fandom. I'm not really that into because I only watch tennis. So maybe it's just me.
But
I'm humorless.
But it's also all facets of life, and we're wired to feel this way if something in the same vein were to happen outside of sport in regular life. When men get away with shit that other people wouldn't be able to do just because, we do not accept that. That's where we come to this from.
Right. But what was made very clear this week is that there's all this talk about how we need characters in tennis. Patrick Mouratoglou himself is talking about this all the time, that Nick Kyrgios is something that tennis needs. I mean, tennis is doing pretty okay with Roger, Rafa, and Novak leading it. The problem is that you don't have those guys in the next generation. It's not that you don't have personality. But what is very clear is that what people are talking about is women's tennis this week. They're talking about Coco Gauff and Naomi Osaka and Bianca Andreescu and Serena Williams. You know, Serena's not even the top story. The conversation about what is good for tennis has already been answered. You don't need someone like Nick Kyrgios spitting at an umpire to be good for tennis. That was made crystal clear to me this week. I mean, I already knew that, but it's like, oh, wow, this moment between Coco and Naomi has become a cultural moment.
And let's be clear, when they say we need an injection of life into tennis, what they mean is men's tennis, because they don't give a fuck about women's tennis.
But also, like, so maybe one of these young guys should win something.
Or also, maybe you should change your value system in sport and start valuing women's sport more, investing in women's youth sport more, and reworking the biases that you have as to what makes sport worth watching.
Mm-hmm. Now, moving forward, I am anxiously awaiting Stuart Fraser's take on Medvedev and how classless he is. Do you think that'll be coming soon? Would it Mark Petchey? Anyone? Anyone out there?
Maybe we can have somebody go courtside and get Jonathan Pinfield's take on it. From the next Alexander Zverev match.
I'm shocked there will be a next Alexander Zverev match.
We had a whole segment here planned about Althea Gibson. We will leave that for the next episode because it's running a bit too long. A few et ceteras before we wrap this show. Venus and Vika have been voted off the WTA Players Council. Did we cover this on the last episode? Or no?
No.
We didn't?
No. This is interesting, right? Because Venus was just talking about this in press in Cincinnati, saying that, you know, if the players respect me and what I do and what I bring to the table, they'll re-elect me, and that's that. And the players chose not to.
Instead, Sloane and Madison were elected.
Where Venus and Vika were in the 1 through 20 ranking spots, there's 4 spots. Sloane and Madison will be joining that group. Maybe
it's just like a youth movement thing.
So the other 2 players at that level are Joanna Konta and Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova. Safajova and Maddox Sands are going to be leaving the council as well, and they're going to be replaced by Donna Vekic and Krunic. And otherwise, it's staying how it is.
Because those other players weren't up for election yet. I think that there'll be more elections next year, from what I gather.
So Venus and Vika will still be on it for the rest of 2019, but starting in 2020, it'll be a shakeup. Monica Puig spoke a little more about the split with Kamal Murray. I actually had a friend translate it because it was a Spanish interview. So she said that, quote, "I found out thanks to people close to me that supposedly my coach was not available to come to the US Open 5 days before the tournament. I found out that he was secretly working with another player, and stuff like that influenced my mentality and training." Secretly working with another player. So there are some more wrinkles to this. She was pretty honest about it. That she alleges that Kamau didn't even tell her personally that he wasn't coming. She found out through somebody else, and that he was basically conspiring with Sloane to get back together. Which obviously there had to be conversations in advance, and the switch was so quick. So those conversations were probably happening during Cincinnati.
Possibly. Do we trust the source?
Well, it was an audio recording.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you have it.
I just have to trust my translator.
I said with a few et ceteras, but we have to still talk about what's left on the women's draw. That is certainly not an etc. situation. On the top half, Naomi Osaka plays Belinda Bencic tomorrow for a space in the quarterfinals. Donna Vekic, who I had making the semis, just putting that out there. She is going to play Julia Gergis. Taylor Townsend plays Bianca Andreescu, and Kristie Ahn plays Elise Mertens. Those are your 8 from the top half. Anything you want to add on that? Anything you're looking forward to there?
Not really.
I think what we're likely headed toward is a Naomi-Bianca semifinal.
Probably, yeah.
On the bottom half, Svitolina took out Madison Keys today, which quite frankly surprised me. I, if you recall, had stated on the preview episode that nobody was out here hyping up Madison Keys. And then I started to hype up Madison Keys in my head because I'd actually watched her play her first 3 rounds on the back of her winning Cincinnati. And I'd convinced myself, like, wow, this is a different Madison. She was ill in her 3rd round match against Sonia Kennan and still managed to finish that out. And what impressed me most was how much margin for error she was giving herself in these matches. ESPN did a graphic showing you where she was hitting her ground strokes, and she was so far within the lines. And she allowed her power to do the work. Because if you get into a rally, an extended rally with Madison where she's pounding that ball, even if she's well within the lines, but if you're rallying with her for 8 to 10 shots in that zone, you're going to be getting pushed back and back and back to the point where it's not tenable for you to sustain. And so I thought something had clicked for her, but apparently not. I'd convinced myself that the 4 favorites for this women's title were Andreescu, Osaka, Madison, and Serena, and that was likely to be the semifinal situation. Instead, Svitolina will play Jo Konta, who beat Karolina Pliskova today, and Serena Williams will play Wang Chung in the quarterfinals.
Can we just pause for a moment and say that Konta has gone semi, quarter in the last 3 majors?
Yeah.
Even though her compatriots think she has a mental problem?
Her compatriots, such as?
Journalists.
Oh, okay. Oh, I mean, you're referencing that buffoon?
Yes.
What I will say is that Konta has absolutely emerged as a can I speak to your manager type character.
Oh, most definitely. Yes. And it's not a good matchup with Svitolina. Svitolina has a winning record against Konta. Against anyone else, I would say Konta's in really good form and would probably get through, but I don't know.
Svitolina looks so tough right now. She has this reputation of being a pusher, and folks hate to see it. But she's also hitting with a lot more power, I think. She's hitting some big first serves. I don't know. It could be tricky. There's something magic about Gem's life happening at the moment. They're pushing each other on to bigger heights.
Her serve is much improved. But look, in the match against Madison, she hit 10 winners the whole match. I mean, 10 winners, 13 errors. Like, she just didn't really dictate. All she needed to do was keep the ball in play for a few shots, and Madison made an error.
Okay. Ash Barty lost today to Wang Chung. It was kind
Ash
of a case
bad.
of putting her out of her hard court misery, because we saw her struggle in Cincinnati, and we kind of looked at it as a glass half full situation, when we were thinking, well, wow, she doesn't have her best stuff, but she's still finding a way. She really is a top player now. But Lord, it did not look good today.
She did play doubles later the previous night, so she may have just been wiped. But it was very bad.
It hasn't been cute for a while now.
No, but this was especially not.
Okay. A few of the upsets that happened earlier on in the tournament, of note on the women's side, you have to say that Putintseva beating Sabalenka in the 2nd round is not cute for her. And we've learned since from Arena that she and Dmitry Tursunov have split. Mm-hmm. And it's amicable, apparently, because they both had wonderful things to say to each other. I want to big up Caroline Wozniacki because she tried her ass off in her loss to Andreescu, and she seems to be struggling. How can you not have empathy for a person when they're going through something like that? Petra Kvitova losing to Petkovic, who now leads the head-to-head like 6-4 or something like that. That is a head-to-head that you just do not expect. Petra herself coming off some injury issues.
I was surprised that Gergis pounded Kiki Bertens in the third round.
Yeah. I mean, we know if Gergis is on, Gergis is on. She hits the ball so clean, but maybe Kiki's a little bit tired. You love to talk about how much she plays. I thought that was going to be your natural segue.
No.
Sloane Stevens, oi,
Girl.
vey.
What? Let's not even go there.
Wow, what a bad moment that was. Muguruza losing in the first round, that was always an upset alert to Alison Risk. Unlike the men, the women didn't really have that many shocking upsets. The other one that was an upset that at this point, is it really that big of an upset? Kiki Mladenovic beating Angie Kerber? But wow, it was a bad loss. And what's become clear to me now is that there's a playbook on how to beat Angie. So many times Kiki would hit the return high off the backhand and get herself back into the point. And even within rally shots, she would push Kerber back with a looping ball and then hit a flat shot to follow up. And it's something that we saw Andreescu use against Kerber in back-to-back weeks earlier in the year. And it's something that Kiki used this week. And when that's not going well for Angie, she looks so ordinary, sadly. And I hope that she's able to right that ship soon.
Okay, so I think we've come to the end.
Except to say that Andy Murray played in Mallorca and
at
lost.
The Rafa Nadal Open.
Correct.
Well, he won 2 matches.
Well, yes.
He lost to Matteo
Viola,
ranked number 240, and said it's really just a matter of fitness right now.
Which makes sense. He has a metal hip. And he's been out of tennis for a while. It's gonna take some work. Thanks for listening. My name is Jonathan. You can find me on Twitter at tennis_John.
And I'm James at ElliotJMR. 2 L's, 2 T's. And The Body Serve is on Instagram and Twitter at The Body Serve, and Spotify and a bunch of other places. So
hit us up with a review. We love those. Till next time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.